So when you get in all these kinds of so it's a whole it's about it's me, you know.
Is everybody in?
Justin.
We're still waiting on Justin. There's someone at the door. Okay, so should we call her? And maybe we can. Justin can come when Justin comes.
Lisa?
Markers out there.
It's the tea. Oh, she's coming. Lisa, it's Linda.
Linda.
Is she coming?
Mm-hmm. I said yesterday she was, yeah. And she was calling me. Oh, maybe that's who she just did.
I'll begin with a prayer in Sanskrit and then we'll get going. We plan to be here till, where's the clock? They moved the clock to the back of me. This is my yoga room. I put the clock in there way back when somebody moved it to the back. More stretching involved. So we'll be here for about 90 minutes, talk, and then go into the temple at 11 o'clock. And then we can come back here for more Q&A. And then we're good to go. All right, so we'll begin. If you can follow along, you can just sit in any comfortable posture, sitting with the back straight. All that you need to do is keep your back straight, your back, neck, and head in a straight line. Close your eyes gently. Relax the expression on your face. Let the tongue fall to the bottom of the mouth. Relax your shoulders. Relax your belly. Bring your attention to the belly. As you inhale, inhale into the belly and let the belly expand. As you exhale, just let go. Slow down your breath, inhaling into the belly. As you exhale, just let go. Sitting with the back straight, back, neck and head in a straight line. Inhaling into the belly, and as you exhale, let go of all your thoughts. Let go of all your concerns. Let go of all unfinished business outside this room. Just as you exhale, let go. We'll be chanting Om 3 times, and then I'll chant the opening prayers in Sanskrit, Sahana Bhavatu. Please bring your palms together at the heart center. Press the palms together gently. Touch the fingers together gently. And try to touch the back of the thumbs into the chest. Now bring your attention to the hollow space between the palms. Pay attention to any vibration, any sensation, any electricity, anything that you might feel in your palms. Stay right here as you chant Om 3 times. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Open your mouth and heart. Inhale. Inhale. Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Release your hands, rub your palms together to generate some heat. Gently cup your eyeballs to the hollow of your palms and then blinking, open your eyes and pull your palms back like an open book. This is a traditional verse from three or four separate scriptures, always mentioned at the beginning of a talk. And it's sort of like a legal disclaimer in Sanskrit, because what it's doing is it's addressed in it's me to you kind of address. And so it's two people, one talking to the other. It's saying, may we both be protected, may we both be nourished, may our actions be radiant, and may there be no differences between us. And Om, peace, peace, peace. And we say it 3 times for 3 different levels. And it precedes, it's a sort of protective shield behind, and in front of a lot of these teachings that are taught. It's in Sanskrit, which is the traditional language of all Hindu scripture. And Sanskrit is an interesting language because it's an old language, so it is technically precise, very precise, but also fluid enough to be used for poetry. And a lot of the words, and so English and Latinate languages have a lot of words in common with Sanskrit. So a lot of words you might even recognize. So dwar is door, for example. Do is two, as you would recognize as well. And so it's a language which came out of regular conversation, of course, but a lot of mantra work as well, which is, what do words mean? How do they feel? And what does this word root feel to each individual, all of us collectively? So it's an interesting language. You can use it for poetry, you could use it to curse people, you can use it to encode a lot of deep spiritual truths in very efficient, tight packages. Mm-hmm. In 3 words, everything that you want to be, know can be packaged in, and you're good to go. And that's all. So there's a few mahavakyas, so great sentences, as they call in Sanskrit. Those run 2.5 words, if that. They don't need the very, very tight. And Sanskrit allows you to do that. And if you're familiar with German, I'm not, but to the extent I know, words are fused together. And when you can fuse words, it is really interesting because you can do any amount of wicked punning with your because you can take 2 words that are separate, fuse them together. Now you could slice the word here, 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 and here, wherever you want. And so it makes it really interesting. That also means, so there's 1, you could do a lot of poetry with it. 2, you could embed multiple meanings into something, and to the extent the recipient is ready for one meaning, that layer will unpack for them. But another layer might unpack for somebody else who's prepared. So it's very interesting in that sense. The other thing is, because you can fuse words, it's going to cause confusion if written. Sanskrit is a pre-written language, and so it's usually sung. All our scripture are usually designed to be heard, shrutis, and not written. You can't read it like English because the words have to be parsed apart, and you don't know which way to parse until you know the meter. So the meter for Sanskrit verses is very tightly defined. Every scriptural, older scriptures will tell you what meter this particular verse is in. And that's important because if you get the wrong meter, you add, for example, I'm just giving you an illustration, you add an sound to the beginning of the word, and it becomes the opposite of that word. So you could actually, instead of blessing, curse somebody because you didn't know the right meter. You unpack the words the wrong way, and it's the opposite of what you wanted to say. So meter is very important, and so 1 meter, for example, I'm just rambling before the usual talk, but 1 meter is so sacred that we chant it, Gayatri Mantra, if you're familiar with it. that mantra itself is chanted as it's a meter, and it's that particular verse is in that meter, and it's the holiest of our meters, but a lot. So for example, Shakespeare is iambic pentameter, right? That's his verse, and if you read Shakespeare, it's weird sound if you read it, but if you hear it, you can actually understand better. And you had a question.
When you're saying meter, you're referring to
The cadence.
The cadence, yes, the
Yes,
rhythm of
yes.
the cadence.
The cadence. What's up? What's down? What's up? So all of that makes a difference. And there's a lot. I mean, I can go in this direction for the next 90 minutes, but that's probably not efficient. There's a lot to unpack over there. All scripture is sung. There are scriptures with 18 volumes. These are the Itihasa, the Puranas and Itihasa, 18 volumes, lots of verses, 24,000 verses, longer than the Iliad, for example. Those are all remembered. That's the efficiency of packing something into meter and in poetic language, because people remember poetry. If I gave you, 2 and 4 years, and you may not remember more than a couple of paragraphs, but when it's in verse, you remember longer, and there are a lot of techniques around that. But so those stories are remembered pre-writing, and so of course they're now written down. I read. I didn't grow up in a family that chanted the Sanskrit, so that meter does not come that readily to me. So I read it, but I try to also do it with the sound in it. But traditionally, that's how it's been transferred. So for example, one of the holy books in the tradition is the Bhagavad Gita. You may have certainly heard of it. 700 verses in the middle of a battlefield, and 700 verses. People remember those. I was here a few weeks ago, and they were chanting the entire Gita. They didn't need anything to read, or they weren't chanting from the book. They were just chanting from memory. And the Sanskrit word for that is kantastha. Kanta means throat, or especially this part. And they say it's remembered here, as in you're just singing. You don't know what you're singing until you've sung it, because it's remembered here. It's not remembered here. So people just remember it. So, and I know that personally. There's a lot of Sanskrit verses and sections that I now remember by heart, or right here, and I will chant them, and I'm hearing it at the same time as I'm chanting, intoning them, because I'm also hearing it for the first time. It's not that I remember it, I'm going to say this word and it comes out. No, I hear it the same time as you might hear it. So that's the interesting part. So traditional teaching would be many years, because it takes that long to memorize these, and so on. So that's the tradition. Now, what do you want to cover today? Before that, demographics. Well, first off, welcome to the Hindu temple. This is the Shiva Vishnu temple at Lvermore. It's a temple that's around 35 odd years old over here, and it is the home to Bay Area's about 250 to 300,000 Hindus that live in the Bay Area. There are a lot of Hindu temples. One opens every week, I'm told. But this is the sort of premier temple, in the sense that most people come here. Hindus don't congregate, we crowd. So you can go to any temple. So it's not as if, and this is a question, I do a lot of interfaith talks. So I go to a church and they say, what temple do you go to? I go to every temple. It doesn't matter which temple, every temple is my temple. It's not that I go to this temple and I don't think those people, other people are my, I go to any temple that has a door open to me, and every temple does. So in that sense, there's a lot of temples in the Bay Area, but this is one of the oldest and largest, and also so really well organized as a temple. So it's a good community temple. But this side is the community center, so there's a lot of classes here. We do health fairs for the community. We do Toastmasters for whatever reason also done here. Kids come for robotics. I'm guessing spelling bee. I don't know. My kids are older than that. So a lot of stuff happens in these places. I teach yoga in this very room every weekend. I've been teaching for, 10 years, almost 10 years in this very room. In this room about 6-7 years, previously elsewhere. So anyway, this is also a good center for the community. However, Hindus in general, 1 in 5 Hindus probably goes to a temple. Hindus are not required to go to a temple on any specific day or any day at all. Hindus are not required deity worship, though most people do. The tradition is very diverse and very wide. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the tradition, how it came to be and where we are right now. My introduction, you already have the known introduction, but I'm a regular business guy, and I have a business. I'm a startup in the Bay Area. That's the business. In LA, everyone's an actor. In the Bay Area, everyone has a startup. I have a startup. But I also teach Hindu tradition. I am dean at a sister or brother program to the Chaplaincy Institute. It's the Hindu Community Institute, where we're teaching people to be counselors of Hindu tradition. So it's similar to what you do. So if you know Lauren, Reverend Lauren Manham, Lauren's a good friend of mine. And I've had Lauren come and speak to our students. It's very together. And if you're also doing spiritual direction, right? So it's spiritual direction, some people, right? Some people are some. Yeah. So Anil Morales Singh from Spiritual Director International. So that's another program. We're very close friends with that. So anyway, so I'm also, not many Hindu people are not very outgoing, and about their tradition. We've internalized that our tradition is our problem. We shouldn't talk to other people about it. Not many people therefore go out and do these interfaith conversations. I do. I teach at schools. I'm part of Tri-Valley Interfaith. I also go to other interfaith places. Whoever wants to hear about Hinduism, there's a few of us who go out and we talk. My own background is, of course, I grew up in a Hindu family in India. I've been here in the US about 20 years. And I'm a yogi, as you can tell by my lotus posture. I'm a yogi of the yoga as the postural variety as well. I'm also I've received initiation into meditation traditions as well. So I have a meditation practice, and so I can speak to the temple part of the Hindu tradition because that's how I grew up. I can talk to the other broader devotional part of the Hindu tradition as well. That's the family I grew up in. I can speak to the yoga tradition because that's who I am now. And I can speak to the scriptural knowledge tradition as well because that's what I teach. So that's the range I can speak to today, and we will figure out what's right for you. Now tell me about yourself. Welcome, and have you all been to a Hindu temple before? Who has not been to a Hindu temple? Okay, how many? I'm sure you all ran into a Hindu person now. Yeah, everyone. Okay, you know Namaste. Everyone knows Namaste. Who doesn't Namaste? And what's your interest today? Where would you like to go? Yes.
Also, my interest is working with people. I assume I'll run into people who are leading their family tradition, I usually call it, and who are interested in looking for other places to plant themselves or to get to know. So with some of the basics, most important things for someone who might be interested in that, but also for people who are in mental health crisis, trauma, that sort of thing, who are practicing Hindus, what's a good way to respond to them?
Okay. What else do you want to cover? What do you want to know about the tradition or the people?
In addition to just understanding more, I did all the readings that were required for this class.
Sure.
But to be honest with you, I didn't walk out with a whole lot. It was so much. It was almost overwhelming.
Yes.
So just to have maybe the Cliff Notes version. And also,
Like you were saying.
I also am interested in knowing or better understanding how I can be of service to somebody who's Hindu or
Sure.
Hindu background.
Sure.
Especially at an end of life.
Yes. Yes. In the Bay Area, there's I'm uniquely positioned to talk to you about it. What else?
Can we talk about end of life
Yeah? Yeah,
traditions?
of course. You got a question, sir?
Yes, I work largely in a nursing home setting, and one of the things that I try to accomplish in my chaplaincy there is to be respectful of people of whatever faith they bring, and what might I do that would show that to a Hindu. We've got a pretty large Indian community in Houston, Texas, where I work.
You're in Houston? Okay,
Yes.
sure, yeah.
And so, what's the right things to ask or the wrong things to ask or do?
Sure,
It's okay.
sure. Yes,
I'm interested in sacred sound, maybe how words go, mudras,
sure.
which would help me center in times when words don't work.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's a whole different talk. I'll see what I can do with
But
it.
whether that also relates to helping someone else, like if there's a connection between those two.
Sure. Okay.
I've got one more.
Sure.
I also teach yoga. I would love to know the connection between yoga and Hinduism from somebody who knows, because when I read Western interpretations of that, they all feel like, this doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
And then next question, how do you get through the Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah.
I've tried, and I get bogged down.
Oh, yeah.
I've not finished it yet.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. I think we're fine, I guess. Yes, sir.
I have a curiosity. How does someone choose, I guess, a form of God?
Sure.
You have 330 million, was it? In
33 million,
counting or
right.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there like a book you can like choose a God or something?
Sure, yeah.
It's just interesting.
Great.
It always
Yeah.
made me curious.
Why don't read? Yes, ma'am.
Can we add mantras to the sacred sound?
Yeah,
And can you talk a bit about Shiva? I have a particular connection with Shiva.
sure.
So you go. Yeah.
Are you recording your presentation?
I maybe, yes.
Okay, I would love a copy of
I usually, it is recording, yes. I usually upload them on video. You can look, I'll send you my YouTube playlist. So I have lectures to high schoolers, which are always fun. They're more fun than you imagine. I have your previous CHI students. I may have a couple of those, not too many. That snafu happened. I have some others. I would talk a series of talks on the Bhagavad Gita, which you might have fun with, because those are quite unusual talks. Yeah. One more. Did I exorcise all demons out of you?
I'm interested in some female deities too.
Female ladies, yes.
What about celebrations? And
Sure.
I just want to say, because it's so funny to me, that my husband went to UC Berkeley way back, and
Sure.
he took Sanskrit,
Mhm.
and he had a favorite professor, and that professor is still teaching at UC Berkeley.
Sure.
And I came from Seattle to be here. I'm here this moment, and my husband is right this moment at 10 o'clock having coffee with his professor of Sanskrit and reciting the shlokas
How
about
nice.
Hanuman that he remembers for 40 years. So I'm just
Wow.
thinking, oh, this is so amazing.
Yeah. What a coincidence, yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought I'd say that.
Nice. That is very cool.
Can I get one more?
Yes, sir.
The group is learning who I am.
Yes, we are.
I have been fascinated with the contrast between my roots as a Baptist minister and the contrast with the sensuality of Hinduism and the acceptance of body as a part of worship and devotion.
Okay. How do I frame your question?
I don't know.
Maybe it's a statement.
I'll just write something and
It's my experience of it. I would like your, I guess, commentary on that experience.
Yes,
of
yes.
it. Is it somewhat on
yes.
task or off task?
That is correct, yes.
Can that be like Tantra?
Tantra. We don't have time to cover all of it. Yeah. I'm now disclaiming myself already. But I'll write it here and I'll see if I can address it somewhat. Yes.
This goes on the bottom of the list, but I'm interested in different foods. I know that some are, some are sacred, some are not, some
Sure.
we eat, some we don't.
Yes. Yes.
I have a sort of weird question, which it really may not be appropriate for this class. But because you talk about Sanskrit, what the connection, dispute, whatever between Sanskrit and Tamil, and what is up with that?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah?
Sure.
Cool, thanks. Cool.
What else we got there? All right. Let's see what we can do in the time we have. You have an hour? Do you mind just checking if I'm in the picture? Otherwise, Thank you. I'm going to see where to pick up the thread and if I can get all of these on my bingo board. I begin with this. Not because I'm interested in thoughts of breakfast, but I'd like to pose a question to you, which is this. I bought this at the Trader Joe's, and can you tell me if this is ready?
If it's what?
Is it ready?
I like mine firm, so I would say yes.
Ready-ish?
But not, most people would probably say not
Okay,
yet.
not everyone ready, but you ready.
would be.
All right, you ready. When will it be ready for everybody else?
Probably a day and a half.
Give it a day and a half.
Yeah.
Now, you tell me, is this Wi-Fi enabled? Alright. But there must be some way this thing knows that it's time to be ripe. So the question to think about is, who ripens the avocado? It's not on the tree. It's just out there on its own, minding its own business. It's not ripe today, it'll be ripe tomorrow. Who ripens the avocado? And I say this because the oldest scripture that we have available, the Rig Veda, primarily begins with this thought, which is, how do things work? What is the sense of order behind everything? You could say time ripens the avocado, sure, but what is time? And when is it time? Why does time ripen an avocado? How does it know that there's a ticking of the talking clock? Right? And so why is this thing, which is clearly off the tree, how does it know that it's time? Under what circumstances does it realize that it's time to be ripe? What is the sense of order in this universe? Because surely you can understand that there is order. It is not chaotic. I'm not sitting here right now and flying away the next moment. There is order in this universe. What is that order? And this searching for the order leads the Hindu sages into the highest highs you can find in any tradition. Because it comes back from rhythm, the word rhythm comes from the same source. Rita is order. Rig Veda also addresses the question of what is the sense of order in everything that we see? Why are things the way they are? And how do they work? And this seeking of order becomes not just a question about breakfast, but becomes the highest question later in Hindu tradition when the word dharma comes around. What is dharma? Hinduism, it's a cliche to say Hinduism is not a religion. Religion is a really, really narrow word for what the tradition is. Why is it narrow? Because you could be spiritual but not religious. But in Hinduism, that distinction does not exist. You are spiritual, you are religious, you could be a believer, non-believer, it doesn't matter what your set of beliefs are. But dharma is that which, dharma itself, the word means, and Buddhists use it as well, the same word. It means, it is the universal foundation of life and relationships, what connects all of us together. Because this avocado is not into its ripening project on its own, right? It's in collaboration with the rest of the universe that this thing works. It isn't just sitting there by itself thinking, okay, maybe it's time. the universe by way of sunshine and air and whatever chemical stuff is going on, the universe is working with this to ripen. And that's true for the avocado. But later when you look at Dharma, what is the right thing to do at any given point of time becomes a really important question. It becomes an important question because that's the question, isn't it? That's the moral question that all of us have. What is the right thing to do? And in the Hindu tradition, two of the big epics are really just about this question: what is the right thing to do? And we have our time history. So one epic happened one iteration before the next one, and we're in the third iteration, fourth actually, but never mind. So they're all about what is the right thing. So the right thing to do has changed from one epic to the next. And from that epic, right at the end of the next epic, which is Mahabharata, at the end of that is a point where we count that we're in the modern age, about 5,156 years ago. From that point on, we're in the modern age. And this age is the worst age of all ages in one way. But if you're wily about it, it could be the best age of all times. But there's not going to get into that. But the point is, what is the right thing to do becomes an important question that Hindu tradition deals with. And a good way of demonstrating that is, have you been to India? Have you been to Europe? Have you been to UK, anyone? You've driven there? Have you driven there?
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice something different?
I'm scared.
You were scared. Why?
Because I'm driving on the wrong side.
They're driving on the wrong side. Exactly. Bingo. All my buttons went up. They're driving on the wrong side. Right. They drive on the wrong side of the road. That's true. They're British. India has the same thing, but we drive on the right side of the road. Haha. Also a joke. So and exactly.
I was feeding you.
The
Yeah,
left.
and I knew you knew. So, that's what yeah. So the thing is, what the right thing to do in any circumstances depends on time, place, circumstance, right? Very nuanced. It's so subtle. It's so subtle that entire 24,000 verse epics have been written just to describe this answer, because you can't get the answer. It's not as if you go up a mountain and you come back with a rule book that says thou shalt drive on the left side of the road. Because, well, in this country that's fine, but I go to another country that I drive on the right side, and now what am I, a sinner? Right? You can't have that sort of setup. Right? Because with time things change. Right? With context things change. With relationships things change. And it's so nuanced that you can't encapsulate it into a set of rules of thumb. You don't have enough thumbs for that. You gotta encode it and pass that information through stories. So the second epic that I talk about, the first epic is Ramayana, and you'll see Lord Ram, his deity inside. The second epic is Mahabharata, which is essentially a war between cousins, but it's really more than that, because the entire world, known Indian world at the time, is arrayed on one side or another. Everyone dies except a few people. Everyone dies. This is true. 4.5 million people or something. Really bad war. But it's a war for the truth. That's the interesting part. It's a war for the right thing to do. And in the center, the extreme center of this is the moment at the beginning of the war. The warring armies are lined up. They have run out of every option to not have a war. They've tried negotiating, they've tried doing other stuff, nothing, no can do. Now they're just here, they're at the battlefield, and the ace archer, the MVP on one side, the good side now, he speaks to his archer, which is God incarnate. He says, his driver. It's like you would talk to your Uber driver, right? It's the same thing. He talks to his driver, he says, hey, can you take me to the center of the battlefield? I want to see the other side. And this is the epic, in the center of this epic is the highest, one of the highest of Hindu scripture, which is the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Gita, which is here 700 verses are spoken between, between the ace archer and his driver, who's really God incarnate. And here too, they're discussing the following thing. This guy, the archer, sees the opposing side and immediately has a panic attack. Chapter 1 is literally Arjuna's panic attack. Because he says, my hands are shaking, my knees are weak, my throat is dry, I'm just nervous, I'm going to sit down. I don't think I want to do this. And he then lays out a lot of logical reasons why he doesn't want to fight. This is my uncle, that's my brother. If I do this, then this will happen. And then, all sorts of, people will marry outside the community, things will happen, people will forget to, all sorts of nonsense. And then the rest of the Gita is, look, here's how you can find the right thing to do at this time. And the interesting thing is 4.5 million people arrayed in a battlefield, and yet he says, here's how to meditate. Bhagavad Gita describes you take a straw mat, and you put a animal skin, then you put a cotton sheet, you sit on it in a particular way. Now you explain to me why in the middle of a battlefield anyone needs to give detailed instructions on how to sit on meditation. But he describes not just that. He says, if you're interested in knowing me through logic, here's the way to do it by logic. If you're interested in knowing me through meditation, here. If you're interested in knowing the truth through devotion, here's the set of practices. Here's what you got to do to know what the right thing is. All these to help you, my friend, decide what is the right thing to do, because you know that walking out of this war is not the right thing for you to do, because you'll walk out today, you'll be back tomorrow. Because this is a war you cannot avoid. You've come to it when you run out of options. You walk away because you have a panic attack. Great, I'll see you tomorrow, right? But you're going to come back because it's your nature and it's the right thing for you to do. But you decide. So there he says, you decide, and in the end, he says, I have decided. Hello, Justin. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now we're just in time. There's some water and stuff, coffee in the back.
Thank you so much.
So that's the tradition. That's the tradition where in the middle of a battlefield is the highest of high sermon. But it's not a sermon that you should do this. He says, here's how you can get to the right answer. And if you go back to the epic, this point isn't the only time they have a discussion. Later, this is an 18-day battle, like I told you, everyone dies. But at the 10th day, again, he has another dilemma, our rider, because he has a skirmish with his elder brother, and then he gets another sermon. He says, look, truth is very hard to write down. But the right thing to do at any given point of time is very subtle. And then he's told a story to explain why this is the case. So that's how Hindu scripture works. That Hindu scripture is explaining the truth in very different ways so that everyone gets to their answer, because their answer is right for them in their context, in that time. And only they can tell what is right for them. And so the entirety of tradition is this: what is the right thing for me? It is a moral tradition, but of the highest variety. It's very hard to do with everyday people, because everyday people want rules. Everyday people want to be told, hey, don't tell me I got to meditate in a cave for 12 years and then I'll know the truth, because I got to know right now the right thing. What are the rules for engagement for my everyday thing? So there are rules of engagement for everyday thing, but you always lay out that the right thing is only known to you. That may be going against the legal or ethical framework of the time, but you know what is the right thing to do. And that's really hard. Now, why did I go into this long detour to tell you this? Hindu scripture, millions of books and verses that are out there, and quite literally millions, not just metaphorically. There's a lot of material available in the Hindu scripture. And but why is that the case? Why is there so much high tradition available in the Hindu tradition. And I'll come to the temple and the temple stuff very, very quickly. When a culture, India, if you look at the economic history of the region, the India region, India region is not just what India is right now. It extends in very wide direction. It goes all the way to Cambodia on one side and all the way into parts of Europe as well. Because that community this is a long spread community. The reason we're speaking in English, which is Sanskrit-like in its structure, is there must have been some sort of exchange way back when. Either it's the same peoples, or we had conversations before, and and the languages have been common. Because why else do we have a common language? But forget that. When a country is poor, so India, if you look at the India region, what I was coming to is, you look at the economic share of India, and you look at those videos on YouTube. India has been one of the richest regions in the world for thousands of years. Bless you. Thousands of years. Why? Because it's a fertile land. It's landlocked on top because there's the Himalayas, and these are seafaring people. And so it's like the United States. We have Canada on top, who's not about to attack us, and we are covered by the ocean on both sides. It's great. It's a great place to be, right? It's very difficult for Alexander had to turn around when he reached India because his army gave up. They're like, dude, I've seen this. It's good. We're out of here, right? Why does he die on the way back from India? It's because his army is just tired out. They've been out for too long, fighting too many battles. I don't go home. So he goes, touches the tip of India, turns around. India was hard to penetrate for the longest time. Very rich culture. Now you tell me, how do you know a culture is rich? A country is rich. What do rich countries make? That is richness in itself. When you're poor, you build roads because you gotta, yes. When you're poor, you build roads. When you're a little better off, you build schools. When you're even better off, you build art. When you're even better off, you figure out ways to lead a complete, happy, satisfied life, and you tell it to your kids. You find ways to communicate this knowledge, because it's very hard to find, and onto your kids. How to lead more complete lives in terms of how to eat, what to eat, how to live, how to interact, what kind of social laws and orders, what should a king do, how should a society be structured, what are economic, what's politics. All of these questions you have to answer, and you have to pass on to someone, because here's the thing, if the internet goes down, we will be back to the Stone Ages, is it not? So someone should figure out this is how the internets work, and let that information pass on. But all of this is very high information. We're physically the same creatures as 200,000 years ago, right? But now the amount of information we're having to carry is through the roof. We don't all carry it in our heads. We don't just carry it in paper. We carry it in our culture. A rich community creates a rich, vibrant culture, which has a lot of information encoded in it, which is invisible to the audience. You don't know how to make a car. You don't, but you do know how to use a car, right? So a rich culture figures out ways for the community to participate in high culture without everyone having to spend 3 lives perfecting this thing. So the scientists or the seekers, the seers, would go off to the Himalayas and sit in a cave and run schools. Do you need tissue? Yeah. And they would come down and tell people, look, this is what I found about human behavior. This is what I found about human psyche. This is what I found about the true nature of reality. This information, because India has been protected for thousands of years and has had a rich culture, and rich materially as well as spiritually, that information is now still available in the Hindu tradition. But it doesn't just belong to the Hindus. This is traditional information that every other culture has also had. The people who built the pyramids aren't around to tell us how they built the pyramid or why. People who built the Stonehenge aren't around to tell us what's going on with their society. They're not there. The Aztecs are not there. The Incas are not there. Native Americans are not, remembering as much as they should. But India does remember it through these stories, through the tradition, through the Hindu religion, as you might see it. Coming from outside, it might seem bizarre and just crazy, hard to understand. So many gods, so much riots of colors, and so many things going on. But that's what every rich culture would look like if you let them time to survive long enough. Because I'll give you an example. 20 years ago, when I was still in India, they'd give us antibiotics like any time. Doctors would prescribe, even till last year, you go to any doctor, you go to a chemist, like the drugstore, and you ask for antibiotics and they'll dispense it to you, right? And the thing is, antibiotics are good. But we now know, after maybe 50 to 100 years of doing it, but they're not really great. They're good, but bugs are better. Right? Bacteria figure out a way around it. So we're still discovering that there are limits to power. That's just 100 years of medical science. What if this culture had been around for 5, 10, 15,000 years? Wouldn't we have discovered all this stuff and figured out that maybe you shouldn't nuke every bacteria? There's good bacteria, you want to nurture those. And here's how to nurture those. Here's this kind of diet is going to be helpful, because having a balanced body is better than having antibiotics, right? And that becomes the science of Ayurveda in the Hindu tradition. Because we figured out that you can't nuke everything, you gotta have balance, harmony. Here's how you have harmony. You know your body type, and then you eat to your body type, everything's happy. You're out of homeostatic balance, we'll get you back into balance. Balance, dynamic balance, is the core of the Hindu tradition. I'm gonna pause. Is this where you want this conversation to go? I see a lot of people in the US now who are spiritual but not religious, people who are eco-spiritual, people who are into shamanistic spirituality or ecological spirituality, spiritual sort of science. All of these traditions, or the mother traditions, like the goddess traditions, or Wiccan, all these traditions will be so much enriched if they just looked at the Hindu tradition and took from it what they need to make their own traditions come back to life. Because it's still live and vibrant in the Hindu tradition. Hinduism is a ecological religion. Because again, it's been around for that long, we've made our mistakes, we've remembered that. And we encode that information and pass it on, how to husband your animal sort of farm, for example. Right? And how to make sure that you're doing it in an ecologically balanced way. All that information, every tradition, you could be spiritual and not religious in the Hindu tradition, and it wouldn't even move 1 inch from the center of the tradition. That's what the tradition is. You could be an atheist and be a Hindu. There's zero problems with that. Zero. You could be an idol worshiper, in quotes. That's murtis are different from idols, but yes, you could be one who doesn't believe in any of this. My mom's side of the family, my mom's father, basically, they were a sort of a Hindu revivalist tradition, so they didn't believe in temples and temple worship. They believed in fire worship and chanting, and that's what they did. And that's totally okay in the Hindu tradition, right? You could laugh at the gods, you could pray to the gods, it doesn't matter. The Hindu tradition is very broad. And so a lot of the press you're going to hear about, this is happening in India and Hindutva this and Hinduism that, a lot of that is just Western projection, which is a failure to understand the tradition. And a lot of that, even Indian people that are educated in English, because a lot of the educated elite like me we think in English. We are sort of split off from the underlying tradition. The underlying tradition is very vibrant and broad. It's very open. So the argument isn't that, and I'm just giving you a sort of a perspective, it isn't that you're Christian or you're Muslim and therefore you're not welcome. The argument is that our tradition is that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole world is our family, the whole universe is our family. So you're okay, because what is Islam? You go to the temple, you go to your mosque 5 times a day and pray to God. I love it. What's wrong with that? If you look at their belief system, there's nothing that Hindus would disagree with, except one thing. the exclusivist nature, saying my rules or no rules, or this set of rules forever. We don't buy that because why? If you look at, and this is my point, we don't come from a desert. We come from a place of plenty. Variety is the spice of life. And you know who knows more about spice. So the Indians allowed variety. Buddhism isn't just a weird offshoot of Hinduism. If you look at Buddhist texts, they come smack in the middle of where the Hindu texts come from. They speak the same language. I could go to a Buddhist temple, and I do, and I have zero problems with it. Why? Because they say nothing that I disagree with. Zero things. Even the most atheistic part of Buddhism, I have no disagreements with. But that's what the vibrancy of the Hindu tradition is. It's extremely broad. However, it makes it hard to understand as an outsider. It makes it hard to deal with. It seems like a relativist, a highly relative thing where everything goes. And there's no moral order, and this thing is just hellbound. Because these guys are, you know what I'm talking about, right? Because they have no moral code. We have the highest moral code. We have the highest moral code. It's just not fixed, free of space, free of time, free of context. We're saying the highest moral code is what's right for you in the context you're in at the moment you're in. Yes?
Can I ask you a question about that? It feels like, excuse me, a lot of the questions were, what do I do with this person? Or how do I relate to this person? Or how do I be with this person in their death? And in that very, I love what you're saying. I'm actually really inspired by it. It's exciting, but
Yes.
you could have somebody who is sort of this part of Hinduism or this part. How would you possibly know how
Okay.
to? And so it makes me think that there's something more fundamental
Yes.
that you could speak to. Is that true?
That is true, and I'll come to it. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me back.
I was on the ride. I was here. Because those were the questions that were coming.
No, this is great. So now let's talk about people, helping people their need, especially end of life or in transition situations. The biggest problem people have is letting go, and inability to let go is often cause for fear, cause for concern, and cause for deep-seated unhappiness. Letting go. In the Hindu tradition, my relationship with God is actually closer than my relationship with this body. Why? Because my relationship with God is right here in my heart. Right? My relationship with myself is also right here in my heart, but I live in my head. So this is the distance to my head. I'm right here with my God. Right? Because how I'm connected to everything in the universe is here. God lives in my heart. So in Hindu tradition, you don't need someone to intercede between you and God to pray for you, because my God's right here. I don't need anybody's help to be in my heart, but I do need someone's help to be in my heart, because I'm usually outside, running away. I gotta come back. Hindus universally, I think you could say this universally, believe in reincarnation. I'll talk for a couple of minutes about it, because reincarnation is alien to the sort of Western mind. So you might think of this as a weird sort of thing. But I ask of you the following. How tall I am going to be in any particular, because I'm tall and reasonably good looking, I have a certain set of, my mom says so. I have a certain set of advantages that come with being taller than the average Indian population and being better looking than the average Indian population. I was born in a reasonably educated family, and so I went to good schools. I went to the number one B school in India, so I have advantages that came to me. Do they come to me as a part of the gift package that I received upon birth? The answer is yeah. 90% of the circumstances of my life are actually directly related to the gift of my birth, which is the time I was born in, the kind of family I was born in, the how tall I was going to be, what my facial structure is going to look like. All of that is random at the beginning of life. If you agree with that, you got to tell me the following. If 90% of my life is random, is thanks to random stuff, Why should I care about what the right thing to do in this life is? Right? Clearly, there's no order in this universe. This avocado is just not going to be ripened anymore. There's no order. Because it's not random. The accident of my birth is completely random, you would think. And so why is there a need to do better? And once you think about the question, you realize if you want the world to make sense intellectually, you have to buy into reincarnation. Because only then do you know there is some sense in this thing. I mean, there are other proofs for reincarnation that I can come to, but I'm just appealing to your intellect. That if you want the universe to make sense, you got to buy that the accident of your birth is not an accident, because then everything is random from that point on. And we're discussing how many angels you can fit on the head of a pin. Right? You, sir, would know that. Right? You're discussing minutiae that have no relevance. And so Hindus, because of reincarnation, letting go is super easy, is the point I was coming to answer your question, which is at the end of life, it is my association with this self, this body, this name, the associations I have with family, those that I'm clinging to, that are causing me to be unhappy. If I'm able to release those, I can die in peace, right? And at that time, you want to know everything will be okay. Not because I'll go to forever heaven, but because if I let go in a proper way, and this is also part of Hindu scripture, if I'm able to die in peace, my spiritual state is not in disarray, right? I'm not confused or unhappy or upset when I die. So then when I'm disembodied, near-death experiences, I'm sure you've read about all of them. When I'm disembodied away from this body, and I'm now unhappy, I'm trying to get back into the body somehow, I'm not focusing on the business at hand, which is, let me find the next set of clothes to wear. This set of clothes I gotta get rid of. It's been gotten rid of. Let me go to the next one. So how do you die peacefully? If you don't let go. And if you don't die peacefully, either frame of self which says, now let me find a better set of accidental circumstances to be born into. So at the time of death, telling people that, look, we believe in the transmigration of souls. I have a really nice talk, it's about 25 minutes, it's on YouTube, about death and Hindu beliefs about death and dying. It was made to a senior living community, so you will like it. In the sense that it's addressed to exactly the demo. No, it's addressed to the right demographic is what I meant to say. And
Old people.
yeah, old people, right? Because the question is what happens after death, and I said I'll tell you what happens after death, right? And so you should watch it. But at the time of death, most people are either sorry they didn't do something, they have unfinished business, unmet desires, or clinging and craving, or aversion. But the Hindu tradition says this body is just a set of clothes, right? When it gets old, you get rid of the clothes, you get a new set of clothes, and that's the one you ride out. So identifying with the self and the circumstances of the self, my family, my money, my bank account, my Instagram account, whatever, that clinging is the cause for so much sorrow. You can just let go. Because, again, it isn't a heaven or hell type situation. There are heavens and hells in the Hindu tradition. Let me not confuse you by that, but they're not forever. You always come back. So it's basically, if you go to Swarga, which is like a higher realm, you kind of do your time and then you come back. You run up an account, you do your time, and then you come back and you do this again. Depending on which Hindu tradition you go to, the Bhakti tradition has this belief. You can go to forever heaven. What is forever heaven? To forever be one with God. But not as an individualized self, not as this me with hair or without hair. It's not about this body, but the true self. So when you meet someone who who's having hardship at any given point of time in their life, dispassion, cultivating that disengagement with the self is a good learning for them to have. That this over-identification with the body and the circumstances of the self is the true source of your unhappiness, unsatisfaction. And so long as you're able to come back to remember it, that's all that is needed. And in the Hindu tradition, one of the sort of folk tradition, it's in Sanskrit, so there is a scriptural reference, yatha antimati tatha gati. So as you are at the end of your death, end of your life, that is the direction in which you proceed. I have a story. You want a story? Mm-hmm. India is called Bharat in the Hindu tradition, Bharat, Bharat. The second epic I told you about is called Mahabharat. It's called Bharat because of many, like this, we're talking maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe 20,000 years ago. I don't know what the chronology is, but there was once a king called Bharat, upon whom all of whose progeny is all of this, right? So King Bharat is obviously a powerful king, and he's wise and powerful, the usual philosopher king type. Here's the deal about King Bharat. So he does his kingdom thing, then he ages out, and he says, look, at this point, I'm done being a king. I'm just going to go to the Himalayas and just do my own ashram, and just spend the rest of my years as a yogi. He goes to the Himalayas, and he has his ashram set up. And there are lots of rivers flowing there. Obviously, it's the Himalayas. And he's by the river and he's sitting there in meditation. And one day, there's a deer who's being chased by a lion. She's pregnant. And she's running. Now she needs to cross the river. She jumps over the river. But she's pregnant. So she gives birth to a baby while she's mid-flight and goes away. So little baby deer is born. He's available. So King Bharat rescues him. Now no longer king, former King Bharat rescues this little deer. He rescues it, he raises it, and he becomes very close to this deer. Now he's a hermit, but he has a deer, right? And so he takes care of him, he feeds him, he really loves his deer. And so when it comes time for him to die, it's kind of evening. So he's thinking, oh my God, this deer is out in the forest. I wonder who will take care of him when he comes back. That's what he's thinking when mid-sentence he dies. And so, as you are at the end of your life, such is your direction. So naturally, the rules of this are that he's going to come back as a deer. So he comes back as a deer. But because he's done a lot of good stuff, so he doesn't get he gets born as a deer near ashram. So he gets taken care of as a deer. And then he's born again as a human form. But this time he's smarter. He's like, okay, this time I'm not falling for this one. I've seen this trap. I'm not falling for. So he decides, you know what? I have a hack. I'm not going to form any association with anyone. I'm not even going to argue with people. I'm just going to be mute. So he pretends to be Jada Bharat. That's his name, which is Jad means like the stupid Bharat. Right? He's not talking to anyone. I think he can talk, but he's not talking. So he's mistreated by his brothers and his sisters-in-law and whatever. Doesn't matter to him. And then one day a king is passing by on a palanquin, so with riders. One of his riders falls in. So he says, "Oh, fetch me a young man to replace my palanquin bearers." So this young man is sitting under a tree, minding his own business quietly. They say, "Hey, you come in." So he sits and he does what he's doing. But the king notices something weird about his ride. It's like his wheel is not centered. His ride is very weird. So he stops the thing and he calls out this young man, who is now walking like this, like a drunk man. So he calls him and he gives him, a sound sort of tongue lashing. And this guy, at this point, he says, "Okay, now let me tell you." And then he goes on to then give him a sermon. And that's how we know the story. So the point of the story was, one, You learn something about him, bless you. You learn something about Hindu tradition. All the truths are encoded in stories because we remember stories. You'll remember a deer being born over a running stream, right? That's how Hindu tradition works, through these stories, millions of stories. But in this story, the message was, at the end of life, as you are, that is the direction you go. So your job as someone who's chaplaining, who's looking after people at the end of life, is to give them a release. Give them a frame of mind, a place where they can go in ease, where they're at ease with their life and mortality. Because again, change your clothes. You haven't lost anything when you die. Nothing happens when you die, except your association with this physical form just ceases. You get a new one, right? Nothing happens. So there's nothing to be worried about when you're a Hindu, because that's our understanding of what happens when you die. You look at near-death experiences, what they describe is exactly what you will find in either Buddhist Bardo texts or in the Hindu texts. Same thing, which is you can come out of your body, you see your own self as if you're yourself, but you're outside somehow. You can hear, but you can't talk. You can smell, but you can't eat. So it's a very unhappy situation because you don't have consuming organs. You don't have action organs, you have consuming organs. Yeah, you have sensory organs. So the point is, at the end of life, people want release. You want to encourage them to let go. And a good way Hindus can let go is you can chant to them. You can ask if they would like their prayers read to them. And this isn't, look, I'll pray for you. Hindus don't need anyone to pray for them because, again, God lives in our heart as ourself. So no one needs to pray for me, but you can help me, remind me of the prayer. The chanting is always helpful as well. And there are verses, I'll give you an example of one of the verses which is often used for offering long life as well as a release from life. It's ironic because the verse literally is a let me be released verse. But it's chanted as an offering of long life, as a seeking of long life blessing. It's called Mahamrityunjaya mantra. It's a Shiva mantra. And the way it goes is Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshayamamritat. And there's a slightly longer version of this verse as well. What it means. The second half of that is interesting. Urvarukameva bandhanan mrityor mukshayamamritat. It says, like a cucumber that's ripened on the branch and it falls off of its own accord. Let me be released from the clutches of death. Because it is time, and it will fall on its own, right? That release, moksha, release. What is that? The release is to this body, from this body, this association with this self. As long as I'm released, I am now free, and that freedom is moksha. And so this long life mantra is really a mantra for a very swift and event-free death. Which, as a personal aside, is exactly how my father died, exactly 10 years and now 10 days ago. He walked to a doctor's office, sat down, he's gone. Just like that. He makes sure that the guy who's, the rickshaw that has taken him, he gets paid, he walks in, he sits down, he looks up, he's gone. Just like that. There's more to that story, but that's how quickly you want to go, because you want release. You don't want this long association and so on. So that's the whole thing. So praying.
What's the name of that prayer?
Mahamrityunjaya, M-A-H-A. If you go to Google, M-A-H-A, M-R-U. As soon as you write M-R-U, enough Hindus have Googled it that Google knows what you're talking about. Mahamrityunjay. Mrityu means death. Mrityunjay, Jaya means victory. Maha means mega. So mega victory over death. Yes?
You keep saying that God lives in your heart, but how are people choosing?
Okay, let's talk about that. So, Ishta. So one of the early teachings in our tradition is Ishavasya Upanishad. 12 verses, very precise, but just one verse is enough. I usually bring a sample because there's food involved. That's for high school kids. I will not bring it to you. It's basically, Namaskar, Krisi. It's a sugar-dipped delicacy. It's very sweet. But Isha means the beloved, that which is dear to the heart. Right? Ishta means that deity which is dear to the self. And your Ishta is your Ishta. Your deity, the one that is dear to your heart, is dear to your heart. The reason there are 33 or 330 million deities, whatever the number is, that's how many hearts there are. There might be more hearts, your heart, everybody's heart. What appeals to your heart, only you knows. You know. And so there is enough variety available in the Hindu tradition that you can, it's not just white or pink, you can try other things and whatever appeals to your heart. But one does not go to one deity to the exclusion of every other. You could do that, but you could go to one deity and go to the others. And it's all cool, no one has a problem with that. It's not that you're in, Namaskar, how are you?
Good.
Uh,
May I join?
yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Ishta, so your deity, you have to hear their story, you have to engage with them. And when we go to the temple, that's what we will do. You have to engage with them. You have to see what arouses devotion in you. But not just devotion. The relationship doesn't need to be me versus infinite God. Infinite God is very hard to attach to. So there's a whole chapter in the Gita which talks about this, which is this. So he says, which one do you like more? People who like you in the abstract as the universe, or people who appeal to you directly? He says, look, they're both dear to me. It's all good as far as I'm concerned. But here's the thing. He says, people who try to attach to me in the abstract, in the impersonal, that practice is extremely hard. You find me a guy who says, I love the universe, t-shirt. And I'll find you a guy who doesn't know what they're talking about. You can't love the universe. It's too broad, there's too much going on, and your heart cannot engage with the universe. Right? But the structure of language is that we name our hurricanes. Why do we name hurricanes? Irma is coming. Harvey is coming. Because when we give it a name, we know it. So names of God is how we know God. So names of God are themselves. The name of God is God Himself. That's the way our tradition is. Their form is also God. Everything is God. Because in the Hindu tradition, there's nothing except God. That's the hidden secret of Hindu tradition, which is it's all one. Your own self, you have God inside, you have God outside. What of you remains? Just a very small marginal layer of self-consciousness, which has no bearing whatsoever. So in terms of deity, that which appeals to your heart, that which opens your heart, that which melts your heart is the deity you want. Because our problem is the reason we are uncomfortable is that our hearts are hard. Because we live in our heads and we disengage from everybody else. Our sense of self is very tightly taught to us. And our hearts are hard. And I say that in the yogi sort of sense and not which is also the poet sense of the word. You've heard poets talk about a broken heart, a heavy heart, cold heart, warm heart, big heart. They talk about the same psychic heart right here, not this physical heart, this here. This heart, because we have learned to be angry, we have learned to be separate, we have learned to individualize and over-individualize, our hearts are rock solid. And that's the problem that we have, which is we are unable to let go of this rock solidness in our heart. How do you melt your heart? Pretty much the entire technology of the Hindu tradition is how to melt the heart. You go to the temple and it is sweet smelling. It's very fragrant, because fragrance is good. The chants are sweet to the ears and they melt your heart. The forms of the deity are beautiful. They're not sparse deities. These are not poor man's gods. They're rich deities. They're very variegated. There's so much story going on. The deities are extremely well articulated. They have a ride. There'll be a mouse or a peacock or a lion. They have, they have signs on their body that they might carry. They have adornments. They have jewelry. You'll see all that. But it's so endearing, right? And so you pick a deity who speaks to your heart, and only you know your heart, and you will know which deity it is. And you don't need to pick one; you can pick them all. But any one form will do.
Just one question. When we get back to, you were saying in the beginning that the myriad of beliefs, all the way from atheism to an intense belief in a God, are accepted. But there's also the idea of reincarnation. How would an atheist reconcile reincarnation?
Atheists can reconcile with reincarnation 100%. Buddhism is pretty much all that. Some half Buddhism is just that. The thing is this. The way I explain it is, do you need the presence of a God, in quotes, to explain that the universe has order? No, you could say the universe has order, period. You don't need to explain using the artifice of a God to explain, right? So you could be an atheist saying, I don't believe in the existence of a God, but I say universe has order. So reincarnation works with that. The Hindus, on the other hand, say, well, if there's order, that order must be God. Because what else is out there? You're saying the universe has order, it's not random, it's not nonsensical, so then that order must be God. We pray for that order. I'll give you another story. This is an actual. It's on YouTube. It's a Pakistani sort of BBC or somebody did this documentary about Pakistan. But I'll tell you the story in a fun way. It's a story of this gentleman who in the 60s or 70s left his home, ran away from home, and basically vagabonded his way into Norway, Sweden, somewhere up north, and he went there. And he was an illegal, and now he's no longer illegal. In fact, at their immigrant museum, they put his shoe, the one he walked in with, as a sort of a reminder of the stories of people who have come there. Now, this person is being interviewed about his life story, and he says, when I came from Pakistan, he speaks English, but not whatever language they speak there. For the first 6 months, I was really afraid. Because everywhere I went, I'd see cops. There were cops everywhere. They were looking for me. I was really afraid. I went to the bus. There's a cop. I went to the post office. There's a cop. I went out in the streets and there are cops. There are cops everywhere. But then later I realized, this one's a postman. That's a bus conductor. That one else is the traffic guy. The cop who's after me for being an immigrant is not one of these. There is a cop, but that's not these guys. Right? When you're new to the business, everything looks the same. Everything looks fearful. Everything is awe-inspiring in the worst sort of sense, right? But when you've been around for long enough, you can tell the difference, right? When you've been in the God business for long enough, you realize that God, everything is God, of course, but you can't. That doesn't suffice. Of course, everything is God. Whether you're fearful or loveful, it doesn't matter. The question is, when you've been in the God business long enough, you realize God does creation. God does sustenance. God lives inside us. God is appearing to us in meditation. God is what animates everything. We are inside the womb of the mother, right? All of these are expressions of God, right? And each of these can be subject to our devotional intensity. My relationship with God can be as a friend. There are many forms. Can be as a friend, as a servant, as a parent, as a lover. And in the Hindu tradition, all of these are explored at length. As an enemy, I love those stories. Two guys on the right, you're going to see two guys in front of Vishnu. Two guys are sitting, and the two biggest villains in the Hindu tradition are those two guys. Because there's this backstory where Jaya and Vijaya, they are cursed by a few Brahmanas, and they have to take birth in this realm. So God says, okay, but these guys are my own people. They're my guards, right? So I got to take care of my people. So they'll be born 3 times. Each of these 3 times, they'll always have their attention to me as their enemy. So Ramayana is, Rama going and killing this guy, and then he's always thinking of this guy. And in the Mahabharata, Jarasandha and Kansa, I think, I can't remember which two. You tell me. Jaya and Vijaya.
Yeah.
So Jaya and Vijaya, they come. So the biggest enemies are these 2 guys, because he says, look, they're always thinking of me. They will never not think about me, and that's my gift to them. So your relationship with God, because their concern was, I'll be born in this, and this realm is this world of illusion. What is the illusion? The ignorance. The veil of ignorance is the lack of connectivity to God. The perception of our separated, individualized identities is the problem. Is the illusion, this project. And riding above this illusion is very simple. You just remember your true nature, which is you're one with God already, but you forget. So these people said, look, I'm going to be born in this weird kind of place where I'll forget you, and I don't want to do that. He says, my gift to you is you'll never forget me. But there's it comes as a semi-gift. Right? So, but relationship as a parent, some of the loveliest stories in the Hindu tradition are in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where this baby Krishna, he's the sweetest little thing. He's out there stealing, he's out there lying, cheating, doing all sorts of. Girls go into the pool, and he steals their clothes, and now they're saying, hey, we need to come out, please. Help me come. That's the sweetest stories. That's baby Krishna, right? And so you could love God as a baby, because your heart, it melts your heart, because such a sweet baby is here. Right? Melting the heart is the important part. All of these are technologies. Anything can melt your heart. Anything can melt your heart. And so in the Hindu tradition, that's the richness that you're about to experience. So can I ask you to tell us about the temple and how it came to be, and what we're about to see inside when we go?
What's your question?
What we'll see inside when we go. I'd like you to describe.
You're going to see a beautiful temple. There are many priests who are decorating the deity and everything. And they'll be chanting what we call mantras. And then they'll be doing abhishekam. And it will be a whole new experience for you if you have not seen a temple. But go there with an open mind, absorb everything, and then if you have any questions, you can always come back and ask him. He will clarify things for you. Make this a beautiful experience for you. Because first time when I came to this country 52 years ago, there were no Indian temples, any of them, very few Indians. And I had good friends in Rochester. Most of them are either Jewish or Italian. I was curious, where do they go? I used to say my prayers, and they took me to synagogue. They took me to Catholic church. They introduced me to. I didn't know anything about it, but I became a student of religion. So because that gave me how should I put it? Something I didn't know. I became a student of all religion. I learned so much about different religions, and I brought my own children to respect every religion. Any religion you go to, deep inside, is always good things. You take the good or the bad. It's up to you what you choose. So go there, enjoy it, come back, ask Gaurav. He will explain it to you.
Thank you. So the temple inside and from outside you'll start seeing the beauty of its construction and so on. Very elaborate. It's beautifully done in the southern Indian style. I have to tell you a little more about the Hindu tradition before we go in. Our relationship with time. Hinduism has a very deep and intricate relationship with time, and sensitive to what's happening around us. So what time of day it is, where the moon is at, what stars are above, what time of the year it is, what season it is. All of those determine what's happening inside the temple at any given point of time. The sun crossed over to on the northern path a couple of weeks ago, which means the sun's been going south for 6 months of the year and goes north, rises more in the north for the next 6 months. The northward journey just began 2 weeks ago, right? And so that is cause for celebration. The solstice is cause for celebration. Where the moon is at is cause for fasting, celebration, all sorts of. It's a very intricate and very involved calendar that runs. We have a daily schedule, but the temple is not just a place of worship. The deities live there. So the treatment they're receiving is this is their home, and they are woken up, they're bathed, they're fed, they're sung to, they're put to sleep, and then they're woken up again. They run a full schedule. So priest's job is to look after the deities. You're just happen to be there. They're not there to tell you about scripture. So I want to tell you, Hindu tradition, in the Western tradition, a lot of different things, the talking to God, praying, sermon, explaining what the right thing to do, all of those tend to be highly grouped into one individual or one day of the week. In the Hindu tradition, the priests you're going to speak are Shastri and Purohits. Their job is not to explain scripture. They might, that's not their job, right? There are other people who explain scripture. They're not there to tell you the moral code. They're there to do the rituals. And rituals are very important in the Hindu tradition in that sense. So because you're visiting their home and the rules of their home are no shoes, right? And other than that, no other rules. The way I go to the temple, the way I think I was taught, is you go to Lord Ganesha first. You always go to him first because he's the remover of obstacles. This is the elephant-headed god for those you haven't seen him, right? You go to him because his job is he takes away obstacles. So you go to him first, and then you go to different deities. You're visiting with them as like you're visiting relatives. Do you ask for something? Do you chant something? You don't have to ask for something. Do you take something? You can take something. You can take anything. You can take phalam, pushpam, patram, toyam. You can take fruits, flowers, leaves, water. Anything is fine. Just your breath is fine. Your presence is fine.
Taking and
Give, as an offering. You can take anything. People take clothes, gold. You see a lot of gold and silver inside. People take any amount of gifts. But the devotion that you carry is what is being asked for. The other relationship with time is when you get a puja done by like Abhishekam, right? The priest is going to ask you, it's like your social security number. He wants to know your name, sure. He also wants to know your family's name, which is, which cow shed your family, long story, but he wants to know your family's sort of which of the lineages you come from, and he wants to know your exact astrological arrangement at the time of your birth, because that's how the gods know who you are, who goes there, right? So this is how you identify. So you need to know all this stuff as you go in, if you want Abhishekam. Most people, some people don't know. Well, you don't know. It's okay. You just deal with that. But that's how the tradition generally works. You don't need to know Sanskrit. You don't need to know anything, but a spirit of devotion is all there is. As you're there, of course, you're also visiting. I'd like you to pay close attention to everything and ask questions. People out there are happy to help. Auntie's here to help. I'm here to help. We can explain anything you would like us to explain. Look for detail. You'll see every god has a ride. There's something going on in that story everywhere. There'll be the mother goddess. She has a lot of arms. She's got a lot of armory. Arms, literally arms in the arm sense, but also arms as in spears and swords and so on. You're going to see that. She's riding a lion, for example. She's killing a bad guy. All sorts of stuff is going on. Mm-hmm. Pay attention. It's really intricate, and there's a lot going on in the temple. That's that. Any other things?
How long will we be in the
You can wear socks. Socks is not a problem. Yeah, just no shoes.
How long will we be in
As long as you want, but I want to be back within about 35 minutes, so we have about an hour after. Is that good? All right. Yeah.
Is there vibhuti?
Huh?
Is there vibhuti?
Vibhuti, there will be a lot of vibhuti there, yes. Every temple, yeah.
You
You'll
should tell
see,
them about
yeah.
that.
Okay, holy ash. So you're going to see that. There's going to be sandalwood paste. There'll be, what's the kumkum? There'll be kumkum, which is the red color, depending on which deity you're at. And they might give you holy water, and depending on which deity you go to, the holy water will taste different because it's got different things going on in each one of them. And all of that, it's all good. So in terms of, I was telling you that Pakistan story. So when you go inside, they're all deities that can appeal to your form. They have functional roles, like the police department versus the DMV versus versus the federal government versus the state. So they have different functional roles and so on. All of that is detail we don't need to get into. Just see what appeals to you. That's the important part. They all have each their own gifts. Some are more easy to propitiate than the others. And a lot of interesting Hindu stories are where some bad guy is going to go to the one that's easy to propitiate and get a boon. They'll get a gift, and then the rest of the story is obviously the gift is going to backfire. Right? Because he's going to ask for like never-ending, like no one can. This category of people can't kill me. Right? No man, no woman, no child, no this and that, not in space, not on Earth, all sorts of. So he gets a really, really specific ask. And then the rest of the story is then God has to then incarnate as the exact exception that wasn't thought of. But here's an exceptional thing. He comes as a man lion from the middle of a tower, for example. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. So each deity has their own form, they have their own function, they have their own the things that you might find more attractive to you. Look for a sense of attraction. That's the most important thing, because if it attracts, which means your heart has unhardened enough to flow in some direction. Devotional attraction, love is what you might experience. You may experience, you may not experience. Yes?
Are they identifiable? If I go to one, will I know if it's Shiva or Vishnu?
Yeah. You'll know.
What's the name?
Shiva and Vishnu, you'll know by the name, by the markings. So 3 horizontal lines is Shiva. The U-shaped tika is Vishnu. Those are the markings you'll see in the priests also. 3 lines versus the U. You'll see those.
Will we see Shakti or Kali?
Yes. Yeah. Kali, no, there's no Kali in this temple, right? This Kali ji, there's no Kali ji.
No, Durga is Kali.
Well, Durga, you see her as Durga, but not as Kali.
It's another incarnation.
Yeah.
Kali.
Yeah. And so the mother is there. So some other goddess people are asking. So there's mother is there by herself, slaying demons. She's there as the spouse. In as well, she's there as the lover in another one. She's there in all places. You'll see a lot of mother related references. There's also a holy cow. Nandi is there. The famous holy cows are also there. And there's Hanumanji, of course, little statue, and then there's a eagle, Garuda, outside. You're going to see that as well, which is the ride that Vishnuji uses. Works. So it's a very intricate tradition. So I encourage you to ask a lot of questions.
We can
Ready?
talk to them.
Yeah, it's good. It's okay to talk. Just not too loud. No cameras, no photos, no videos, no nothing. Yes.
I'm going to get Narayan because he's here.
Okay, good. Yeah, Tracy, right? Yeah.
He's a
You just sort of gods, are they male, female, are they people, are they, just that,
Yes.
but in Hinduism,
I also have a question if you haven't.
Sure. Go ahead.
Is it unheard of, or is it common for somebody to be practicing Hindu and also something else simultaneously, like Muslim or Christian or Buddhist, to identify that way themselves that way?
If you're actually, that's a good question. I will answer that. Any other questions from the temple visit before we come to that question?
I'm a little interested. It's not important, and I could probably look it up, but I'm a little interested in the architecture.
Sure.
The stacked, like that shape, that form.
I'm not suited to answer that question, so I'll skip that. Any other questions? Any observations? What did you see?
It's not directly related to that experience, but I have a growing curiosity about what does it look like to be Hindu, but not be drawn or pray to deities? Because you said that you could be all across the.
Right. So this is similar to his Justin's question. Just need a follow-up question or a different question?
Oh, related to that, the site visit to the temple.
Sure.
She mentioned that there's no Kali, but there's a Durga shrine. Is there a reason for that, or is it just the way that it happened?
Just the way this temple is laid out.
Aren't they the same? I thought they were the same.
They're the same, but a different form of the same goddess. Yeah, but you may bring in one form or the other depending on whatever choices they're made. Yes.
I guess that's similar. A question is how did this particular temple choose who they wanted to represent?
Sure. Yeah.
And why is the Earth Mother black and Kali is usually black?
Sure. Okay.
Can we come back later and spend time here?
You can visit the temple anytime. The temple's open to anyone. So long as you keep your shoes out, you're welcome. Other than your shoe, everyone is welcome. But you're welcome. The temple is open from 9 to 12 in the morning and reopens again at 6, goes on till 8 in the evening. So you're welcome to attend. You're welcome to come and sit for as long as you want. On the weekends, we have food, lunch and dinner. You can also enjoy some of the prasad. It's all good.
And when there's a big event, is any part of that explained, or you just participate?
No one explains anything in Hinduism. That's the challenge. You have to piece it together over decades. Yes, Justin.
Is there a protocol to I noticed there was a gentleman who put 2 yellow dots on a young lady's forehead.
Yeah.
Is it gender specific? Like if I had taken 2 yellow dots on my forehead, would that have been weird?
No, it's not gender specific. Okay. However, there's the hair parting, which I do not have to deal with, but in the hair parting, there's red colored kumkum. Only married women do that. That's the only sort of gender thing. Everything else is good. How this temple came to be the way it is, it's a classic South Indian style temple. You go to other South Indian temples in the US, they'll look similar. This architectural style is very common in South India, the particular design where the sanctum in a particular way and the layout in a particular way. Temple architecture is very well articulated in South India. There was a flagpole outside the temple. Many South Indian people wouldn't go to a temple that does not have the stamba, the flagpole, because then it's not legit. It's not proper.
What goes in the flag?
There's some reason I don't know myself, but those distinctions are made. In North India, North India was heavily invaded upon despite the Himalayan barrier on the northwest side, which is now Afghanistan. That part was also part of India. There were a few passes where Mongol hordes and other dudes would come in, and they did come enough times. So North India was very frequently invaded upon, so the architectural style is different from South India for that reason. Different sort of steeple style design. So temple architecture is a very detailed art and science in the Hindu tradition, especially in South India, not so much in North India. Okay, what were some of the other questions? Theism versus atheism, and then which deity, or what we?
Yeah, how do you choose the deity?
How do you choose the deity, and then
the sexual, the gender.
Yeah.
I have a very just a question. So you said they were bringing lunch.
Yes.
And there's a lot of offerings. What happens to those?
They're put out where we were trying to enter that building. There's a place where they lay it out on a table like this, and you can have it. After the deities are there.
That's what I was
Yeah, nothing's thrown away in our tradition. Nothing. Yeah. So especially deity food, it's a blessed food, so people want to have it.
So basically, the food is being presented to be blessed.
Yes.
More than them to consume.
But it's made as it's for you. It's your food. It's being offered to you. And in the Gita, there's a verse that we chant in my home as well when we want the food to be blessed. So once a day in our family, we have a tradition that once a day we'll make a fresh meal. And then there was a question on prohibitions on all food. I'll come to that. We make a fresh meal and offer it to God first, and then have it. Same food. We're going to have it, but offer it to God first. And the verse we chant is from the Gita, which is Brahmarpanam Brahmahave Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmena Tena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina. Very on. What it means is what comes from Brahma, the universe, goes back to the universe. What actions I put out come back, right? So this offering I give to you, because I've made from these offerings from the universe, I offer it to you, and then that's how I engage in action. I engage in action by saying, look, all this form is a vehicle for you to act in this world. So I offer this entire self to you. Let me be a vehicle for your action. Like this finger does not have an independent volition. Or hopefully it does not. If it did, I'd be concerned. Unless it was the next finger, in which case a traffic cop might pull up and I'd say, I don't know, it had a mind of its own. But this finger does not have independent volition, right? It acts on behalf of myself. This self acts on behalf of the higher self. And this fake sense of individual volition, I'm getting rid of it by saying, this is you who wishes to act through me, so may all my action be your actions. Let me be out of this business of engaging in individual action. And that's the thing. What food is prohibited? That was your question early on. Depending on the tradition, nothing is prohibited, but how far left you go is so one tradition, especially on the extreme left-handed tantra side, sex, meat, alcohol, everything is good, acceptable as a means of transcending the self. And there's a reason for that, which is you're trying to go past, this any likes or aversions and likes. So you go through them by consuming in the extreme left tantra. And most mainline, and that's good for TV. Reza Aslan can go to India and make a thing that there are people who do this kind of thing. It's like very fringy of the fringy thing, but it's still within the Hindu fold. But it makes for good TV. It looks very sensational. Most Hindus won't do that. I'm vegetarian because that's the family I was born into, and that's who I am. But meat, a lot of people eat meat, and that's okay depending on the day. Some people don't eat meat. They're eating meat only on days not Tuesdays and Thursdays, for example, depending on who they are. Depends. One thing. So there are some foods, however, foods have tendencies. And so there are food-related rules of thumb that are put out. So sattvic food creates a sattvic personality. Now there are 3 states of being. Ignorant or indolent, where you're ignorant and you're just dull. Angry or outbound. And at peace and clear, lucid and clear. So those 3 states of being work. Now in your car you have the brakes, you have the accelerator, and you have the steering wheel. And those 3 might be the 3 states of being of your car. Sometimes the brakes are working, the damn thing isn't moving. Sometimes your foot's on the accelerator and God help us. Right? And sometimes you've got the steering wheel and you can tap whatever you wish to tap. Now, in the Hindu tradition, for the most part, people want to be I got the steering wheel and I'm in control. I will tap whatever I want to tap, but I'm not brake heavy. So you want to eat foods that give you energy, that give you clarity and lucidity of thought. And so some foods bring anger out of you, some are activity oriented. Those foods, so in modern psychological parlance, you might call them uppers or downers. Those are usually drugs, but you get the idea. Some foods are uppers, they get you amped up. Some foods are downers. Some drugs are downers, and you're like, okay, I'm just chilled out, I'm just going to relax, right? You want to be in the middle because you want both the up and down. You want to be in a happy medium. So sattvic food tends to be vegetarian, lots of ghee, which is clarified butter, grain, pure whole foods, very whole. So good mix of food. You could have very spicy food or very sour food, but those are the other 2 varieties. Spicy food gets you outbound and engaged, but it only comes to sorrow if you press too much on your accelerator. So you want to have a good. So some foods. So depending on what the nature of the food is, you might consume it or not consume it on certain days of the week or at all in your life. for that matter. So my family, my mom didn't even have onions and garlic, because onions and garlic are not sattvic. They are outbound foods. They bring out aggression. Also, they make your body smell to her. So she would not have onion and garlic. We could have it. It wasn't like proscribed in our tradition. She just didn't have it. Even now when she visits and we go to a restaurant, she can smell from about 5 feet away that this thing has onions. We've become that way in my family now. We've also stopped having onions because we're yogis, so we don't want all this extra aggression. We just want to be clear and lucid, because that's our project. So then, if you're a yogi, you're going to have food that brings you energy and vibrance of experience, not anger, and certainly not indolence. You don't want sour food that just makes, or stale food, because stale food makes you dull. And so that's the food situation.
So you also subscribe to an Ayurvedic?
So Ayurveda is the same way, yeah. Ayurveda is the same way. Your body type might also determine what you're going to eat and what is good for you to eat, and all of that. There's a lot of detail that the Hindu tradition goes into. So, okay, your question, sir, was on yoga and Hinduism. The Hindu insights, Hindu spiritual scientists came in a few varieties. Some were social scientists, like kings and rulers. But a wide majority were saints and sages and seers and poets. And in all cases, they knew how the system works. And so they would have, there are three primary forms of yoga. So bhakti is devotional yoga. Jnana is meditative and observational, logic-based yoga. And karma is action-oriented yoga, where you're in the world and you're sort of acting in a particular way. All those yogas are available and present. Physical postural yoga as well as breath work is hatha yoga or ashtanga yoga, which is preparatory to the meditative states of the higher meditative states of samadhi and beyond, where the distinction between me and you falls away naturally. It's very hard to get, but it is possible to get you. I'm here to assure you, it is possible to be in those states momentarily through flashes, or for long periods of time, or perpetually. Yogis have been in and out of those states forever. All the insights, and so another person, your question just was, can you be a Hindu and a Buddhist, or a Hindu and a Christian, or a Hindu and a Muslim? The Hindu tradition's own name for ourselves, Hindu, we didn't call ourselves. Our name for our tradition is Sanatana Dharma, that which is timeless and contextual, that which never changes with time and that which changes from moment to moment, that wide range of experiences. The truth with a capital T and the truth with a small t, everything is included in the tradition. So to that extent, anyone who believes anything is a Hindu, follows Sanatana. Anyone who's interested in the truth, whether with a small t or a big T, is essentially on the same path. You may not know it, but we accept it. So the Hindu perspective on people of other tradition is, actually it's very open. In my home, my father was very broad-minded, and in his altar, he would have imagery from other traditions. We don't have a problem with that. In many Hindu altars, you'll find, because we're Western educated, I went to a Christian education, I did well on the Old Testament and the New Testament, and so if I have a Bible or a cross up there, there's no problem with that. Except now people are saying, well, you can't do it. But in general, the Hindu tradition doesn't have a problem. Some of the highest saints of the relatively modern Hindu tradition are not Hindu saints. They were not born Hindu saints, they're now Hindu because we follow them. One saint whose temples are now all over the Bay Area is Sai Baba. He sat and taught in a mosque. So the temple we go to is literally a mosque, because that's how he sat and taught his teachings, Sai Baba.
And Paramahansa Yogananda does Christianity and Hinduism.
Yes, Paramahansa, because he came here and he's speaking to a Christian audience, he retold his stuff in a Christian thing, totally acceptable. Frankly, and this might be, I'm sorry, I apologize if it's heretical to your belief, but from a Hindu perspective, anyone who's a seer or a prophet or who has seen the vision is acceptable in our tradition. So if someone came to me and said Jesus is a realized realized saint, Zero problems with it. We have hundreds, thousands of realized saints. We can add more. Surely we can accept one more. Someone says God speaks to me, we totally get it. A madman who says God speaks to me is going to be a saint in the Hindu tradition because God speaks to him. Right?
Where does Kriya Yoga fall into those?
So Kriya Yoga is I have Kriya Yoga initiation. So Kriya Yoga is traces itself back to Lahari Mahasaya in the 1800s. The railway employee of the British Empire, and he was given this yoga by his guru, a mystical saint in the Himalayas. Kriya Yoga traces itself into the scripture quite deeply, because even in the Gita it's described. Kriya Yoga is a one. There are three core parts of Kriya Yoga. I'm sorry, this is out of syllabus. I'm just describing for your benefit. The core parts of Kriya Yoga go back to the Ashtanga system. 3 words in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra: Tapa, Swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana. Tapa is austerities. Austerity is why? Not because I don't want to have food, because I'm going to starve this stupid body of mine. No. Austerity is because you want to purify your body. Austerities are not just of food habits, but also mental habits. Of spiritual habits. Tapa. Tapa literally means heat, because if you're spending your energies out, you're not spending your energies in. So you stop spending your energies out on consumption, the energy stays in, and you generate tapa. Tapa. Swadhyaya, study of the self. You could treat it as self-study or study of scripture, or study of the self with the smallest, or study of the self, the capital S, the self of all ourselves. All of that is Swadhyaya. The third is Ishvara Pranidhana, perceiving and engaging with divinity. Ishvara Pranidhana, engaging with divinity through devotion. Those 3 are Kriya Yoga. Those are the 3 tenets of Kriya Yoga, which is part of the Hindu tradition. And there are breathing practices, which are precursors to meditative practices, and they allow you to see more readily that which is before your eyes, but you're unwilling to see it. The truth is out there. The distinction between you and me is not quite as hard as you might make it out in ordinary life. But we don't see it. Kriya Yoga breathing practices allow you to stabilize your mind and then see more clearly, with more readily, the truth.
Is it separated from the 3 basic yogas, or does it fall under one of those?
Distinctions are hard. So in the Hindu tradition, and this isn't well known, and maybe this is just me saying it, Hindu tradition is not a definitional tradition. You can know things in 2 ways. You can know them through the definition, or you can know them through the intuition. And the Hindu tradition uses both. We have very strong forms of logic, like super deep forms of logic. But the problem with definition is a definition defines the thing by articulating that which it is not. It defines the opposite more than it defines the thing. Intuition, you can perceive it directly, immediate, without any media. So is there a distinction between the yogas? Not really there. There's no distinction. It all unpacks the same way. But nominally from the outside, you might say there is a difference. But it's for the experts to argue over and PhDs to be written. Practically, they're all the same. But that is me. I'm not an expert. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering, when certain saints from India come here, like Mata Amritanandamayi or Anandamayi,
Yes.
Does this temple or do you connect, do you do things together? Do they
We can
come
host them, yes. We do host visiting saints all the time. They come here, there's a bigger hall, they can address. There's, I can't remember which saint this lady, Ma, had come. We had visited her, I can't remember her exact name. But yeah, they're welcome, we will host them.
Living people?
Yeah, living saints, yeah, all the time.
Are you Amachi then?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Amma-
She comes here?
But I don't know if because she has her own center out there, which is really big. I think she used. I can't recall if she's been here to this temple. I'd have visited and hugged her. But you have a question?
About the theism.
Theism and atheism, yes. Okay, let's talk about that. So, is there a God? Is there a God? Do you need a belief in God And the answer is no. In Hinduism, there's like zero requirement for you to believe in a god whatsoever. Zero. And the only problem with that, as I said with the Bhagavad Gita, he says, look, you could come to me as, well, the whole universe is God and I'll engage with the universe. It's kind of difficult. It's a very difficult practice to maintain and uphold. It's very difficult to have your heart flow with devotional love and fervor to the unseen, unmanifest, impersonal universe. It's very hard. You could do it, but it's kind of difficult. But it's acceptable. You could say, I don't believe in God. Totally not a problem. It's not a problem at all. Polytheism. Polytheism is a word that kind of traces back to sort of the Greco-Roman god pantheon kind of thing. Hinduism is polytheistic, but it's a misunderstanding of the language. We don't think there are many gods. We know there is just one reality. We don't think there are many governments, for example, but we go to the DMV, we're not going there to say, I'd like to register a complaint about my neighbor. You go to the police station for that, right? So we recognize that even though there is just one, there are functional specializations that you can go to. And that's just the way we see it. So if you've been in the God business for thousands of years, you kind of understand that it's all one, but that's not much to say. You say, okay, creation, destruction lives in our heart. The will to move, all willpower itself, the ability to think, all of these are creative energies, and we got to know them directly. So all these forms are, in that sense, manifesting that intention.
Are most people born into, I mean, I assume most people are born into this tradition, but are there, yeah.
So can you become a Hindu? So Hinduism is not a proselytizing religion, except a few places where we have an outreach. Can you become a Hindu? Is there a process of becoming Hindu? For example, am I being baptized when I become a Hindu? None of that. You become a Hindu the moment you realize that you're interested in the truth. Little t, big T, it doesn't matter. If you're interested in the truth, you're practically already Hindu. So scientists, some of the biggest scientists have been followers of this tradition, and for all I care, they're Hindu. Nikola Tesla was probably a Hindu. Anyone who believes that energy underlies all matter, that which appears solid is really just filled with space and energy, but he's Hindu if he thinks that.
I have to go.
You gotta go?
I'm sorry. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys back.
Thank you.
And Robert Oppenheimer, my favorite example in the Gita. Robert Oppenheimer, not the favorite if you're Japanese, but otherwise favorite. Well, he is a big follower of Hindu tradition, so he cites the Gita all the time, not merely when he was interviewed after the war and he says, how do you feel? Even to convince his fellow scientists that you got to do your duty, he cites the Gita. The reason pacifist, communist scientists are out building a weapon of mass destruction is what? How can you get a pacifist scientist to build a weapon of mass destruction? You got to appeal to their sense of duty. And where does Oppenheimer find this inspiration for the sense of duty? He goes to the Gita. He says, look, your job as a scientist is to do your job. You're not dropping the bomb, that's somebody else's decision, and it's on him to drop the bomb. But if you don't do the right thing for your company and country, and in an equal war where both sides are equally pitted, we're all going to die unless you give us an advantage. Your job as a scientist is you give us an advantage, because we know the Germans are also trying to build an atomic bomb. You don't do it, they'll build it, they have the advantage, the war is over, we're all dead. Right? So he appeals to their sense of duty, which he traces very directly to the Gita. Unambiguously. He says this is your duty as scientists to do it, because that's your job. And he is a pacifist. Oppenheimer himself is not in favor of dropping the bomb. He's a pacifist. He builds the bomb, then he says, you got to get rid of this stupid thing.
What if a person feels like their duty is to resist?
Then you should resist. That's your duty. That's exactly up to you, which is maybe it's your job to resist. And not related to Hindu, it's very important that we recognize this resistance. That resistance actually gives us energy. If you didn't have resistance, you wouldn't exist, because your body is made of cellular matter, where the fat cells are covering the body. They're actually hygrophobic. They don't like water. That resistance to water makes the makes us exist. If fat cells liked water, we wouldn't have cellular boundaries, we couldn't exist. Fat cells hate water, so they gang up together. Because they gang up together, we have cellular walls and boundaries, and that's why we can exist. So resistance is a good thing. It is also part of the plan to resist. If that's your calling, by all means resist. No question about it. But you got to know what your duty is. Don't just follow the herd. And that's the core part of the Hindu. That's the reason it's a very difficult tradition to understand from the outside, because it's a very experiential tradition. You can't understand it in logic, because there's a verse in it, as soon as you say it, you regret it. So Guru Nanak, if you went to the Sikh temple, Guru Nanak says in his findings, he says, Jeko kahe piche pachtaye, which means whoever says it, whoever speaks the truth, immediately regrets it. Because the truth is beyond the ability for words to grasp it. As soon as you say it, you have somehow shaved the truth and limited it to a thing that it is not, it cannot be contained. But you still got to say it. You're going to regret it, you got to say it. Because how else are you going to transmit it? But the understanding is it's experiential, don't go by the words. So finger to the moon, this is a Buddhist thing. If I tell you to see the moon, don't look at my finger, it's the moon that I'm pointing to, right? So the experience matters. The carrier of that experience, the words and others don't really matter as much.
Is this the moon we're supposed to remind
The finger pointing to the moon. No, I told you the moon story, which is one of the two king dynasties in India. One is the solar dynasty, the lunar dynasty. Lunar dynasty, the sage's son was alternately a male and female, not male female. And in the female month, he gave birth to the child, and so on. So that's how the lunar dynasty comes to be. It's an interesting story. Very fluid gender identity in that sense. Have I covered none of the questions? I think I kind of covered quite a few.
You did.
Okay, let's talk about the mudras, yantra, mantra, and sacred sound. So the secret, the Hindu tradition, once you're well off enough that you don't need to work 24/7 to acquire the next iPhone, then you can spend your energy in true, deeper research. What research? Sounds make a difference. Geometry of sound makes a difference. The body is an instrument, and how you structure and shape the body makes a difference. We have not just blood flowing through this body. So the Taoists in China, the Tibetan Bon tradition, the Hindus, we all recognize there's a physical body and a loosely associated energy body associated outside. If I do this mudra, I have just closed an energy circuit here, and it affects my mood. I do this, I've changed my mood. I do this, I've changed my mood. I do this, I've changed my state. And only when you're able to get to a place where you have subtle practices, that your sensitivity to even the most minute changes in your own inner state can be observed. You need to have the food discipline, the lifestyle discipline, the not watching social media discipline, because you want to be in a very sensitive state. Then you can get to a state where you can observe what yantra, what mantra, what mudra can do for you. Sounds have geometry, names have geometry. Yeah? And sounds, when chanted over and over and over, have a certain impact on the inner self. All of those, deep research. But then the average guy on the street doesn't know anything. You can't tell him to go do research for 20 years in a cave in the Himalayas, right? So you say, look, this is what I found. It's the same. You're not inventing the internal combustion engine every day to drive a car. Someone just gives you a car, you drive it. So it's been broken down into sounds and holy syllables, and you just chant those and you're off to the races. You don't need to do the research. Someone's already done it. The saints have already figured it out. This is what you do. So when you chant the holy name, any holy name, the reason you know it's holy is the following. The more you chant, the more attractive it feels. The golden rule in this world of death, Mrityulok, is this. It's saturation heavy. I give you one candy, you're happy. I give you 2 candies, you're happier. I give you 3 candies, you're happier, but you're beginning to suspect my motives. By 4 candy, you're calling to your doctor to check. By 5, you've already called 911. Right? You know there's something nefarious going on. You can't have too much of what's available in this world. Right? That's outbound. But when it appeals to your heart, you can have as much, and the more you have, the more you want. And that's the holy name. Those sounds, you can research and find out what those sounds are. That's available. When you chant Om, I've done this in a Catholic school. Kids have come back to me and they've told other teachers that I felt it. What was it you did? I said, I didn't do it, you did it. I'm just telling you what my tradition has taught me that already exists as inside everyone. You can experience the same thing as long as you're open. That's the geometry of this energy body. Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk about the relationship between the rishis and sacred sound?
Yeah, the rishis were scientists. So the rishis, and rishi means the seer, the one who's. So they were. There's a lot of story about these rishis. These sapta rishis. There were lots of rishis who did a lot of research in sound, mantra sadhana, or in psychology of the self, or in energy systems. All of these rishis, so they would find something and come back and give it to us, because they have purified through their practice and given it to us. It's like a flame that you've lit. Once a flame has been lit, I can come and light your candle just as well with the same light. But someone's got to find a way to light that fire. These rishis were doing that. Sanskrit and Tamil, Sanskrit and other languages. Sanskrit and Tamil, the difference is made out more so in the modern world. They have previously engaged very heavily with each other, and there's a lot of devotional literature in Tamil. I don't speak Tamil, but my language is closer to Sanskrit. But there's a lot of devotional literature in the Tamil literature as well. It's actually equally ancient, maybe more ancient language. Tamil is very well structured language, and it's beautiful. And there's no, I mean, this Tamilian North Indian thing is just thanks to our friends in the European colonization business, whose job was to set brother against brother. I met a cabbie in Chicago the other day from Rwanda. He told me that in Rwanda, the Hutus and Tutsis I thought were like sworn enemies, mortal enemies. He says you can't tell a guy apart on the street. He said, I can't tell them apart. They're exactly the same as me. I'm a Hutu, the other guy is a Tutsi. Why does he want to kill me? Because 100 years ago, they were told by their colonizers, you guys are actually sworn enemies. You should fight each other. Why are you just living in peace? So they're fighting each other. So,
Divide and conquer.
yeah, divide and conquer. It works all the time.
What about the celebrations? Is there like a certain day? I noticed some of these were a week long.
Great question. So, Hinduism, again, time sensitive. We are very sensitive to time, the time of the year. And because it's a sort of agrarian culture for the most part, a lot of festivals are crop related. But there are a lot of time related, a lot of non-religious but time related things. For example, on the 13th, 14th, 15th of January, all over India there are celebrations. It's no religious thing, it's just cultural. So they exist. So Hindus celebrate a lot of things. Crossing over of the sun over to the north side is a celebration. The 11th day of the month of the moon cycle, in every moon cycle, people fast. I fast, and you can celebrate. Full moon you can celebrate. No moon you can celebrate. The beginning. So if you look at the winter solstice, celebrate. Summer solstice you can celebrate. Easter, you can trace it back to the fertility goddess, right? So there's a lot of fertility, spring, vernal sort of equinox related festivals. And what is the other? Spring equinox and vernal equinox. Yeah. So there's a lot of festivals.
But they're all related to the earth and not to the deities. They don't have their own.
No, the earth stories are tied to the deities. There's always a story, and sometimes there are multiple interleaving stories. So I'll give you an example. There's a spring festival which is you throw colored water and perfumed water at each other, holy, right? You go to different parts of India, they have a different backstory for why this festival exists. Different backstory. You go to another festival in winter, which is Diwali, Festival of Lights. Right before that is the Shara festival. Before that, and depending on where you go to in India, they have a different deity and a different backstory for why it happens. It's either the mother goddess or Lord Ram or something else. There's a lot of different stories. The tradition is very intertwined and it's hyper local. Your village goddess, your deity might be different from your next village deity. It's all good. All good. Yes, sir.
I think maybe a strange question. Do you attribute the poverty in India to the colonization? It's just I just see such a paradox from such a rich culture like you were describing, and so much richness.
Sure.
I'm really feeling
So if you look at the
overflow of it, and then such a paradox of the poverty.
If you look at the graph of sort of world sort of prosperity and global GDP kind of graph, right? India and China are like the vast majority of the global wealth for the vast majority of history. India more than China sometimes, China more than India sometimes, but really together, vast majority. But then past Middle Ages, this is reversed, and of course, the calculation is that the British, God bless them, siphoned out about $45 trillion worth of wealth out of India. Why? How they did it? Very easy. You buy stuff on the cheap from India, ink, cotton, and so on, and you sell them stuff that India already produces in free, but you don't let them buy it from anywhere else. So fabric, you can't make your own fabric, you gotta buy British fabric. Salt, you gotta buy British salt. India makes salt all the time. Why do we need British salt? Because they need some money to buy the raw material with. So they want to sell us something. In China, they sold opium, which you might remember the opium wars. They sold opium to the Chinese men, destroyed generations of Chinese people. Why are they poor? Because generations were ruined by opium, which they went to war. The British went to war against the Chinese, saying, I need access to be able to sell opium to your people. And the Chinese king said, look, we can't have you sell opium to my people. He says, no, can't do. We need rights. Opium wars, read it up. Right? Why are these countries poor? Because the way the trade was set up, money was being siphoned out left, right, and center. Our spiritual wealth remains because we still have vague memories of that tradition, and we have books written down, and sages are still around. Unfortunately, our sages didn't eat much, so so they can subsist on very little. But a lot of wealth was just siphoned off. A lot of wealth was siphoned off. Not just by the European colonizers, even before that, Muslim colonizers. Why were so many invaders coming in? The Mongols were coming, and before the Greeks were coming in the around the time of the Buddha, right? Why were the Greeks so Greek of the Greek system? This is before Christ. There were a lot of world was Hellenic. Right? Even the Jews were Greek-speaking Jews in the time of the old Bible. So they called them the Greeks, but they were really Jews. They were just Greek-speaking, not Aramaic or other languages. So some part of India was also run by the Greeks, Seleucus Nicator and his people. So India was really rich in his big sort of cauldron, or sort of big sort of corn bowl or whatever of civilization. But why is it poor now? Because money has been siphoned off, and it takes time to come back. But the other reason India is also poor, same with I think China, is the education systems were broken down. It's the same how Native Americans, the kids were taken away and saying you can't learn your culture, you can't learn your tradition, you gotta speak English. And so over generations, people have been deracinated, especially educated Indian types, people like me. Are deracinated because we think in post-enlightenment scientific BS jargon. So what happens is we are unable to connect to our tradition. That poverty is worse than the material poverty. Indians don't really care for material poverty as much. You go to India, you've been to India? Who's been to India? Shia, huh? You've been to India, right? You go on the street, as soon as you get off there's poor people. But you tell me from your Uber, you look outside and you will see two poor kids laughing and playing with each other. And you're thinking, why the heck? I've never laughed like that in years. When was the last time I felt so happy? Right? Yes?
Sort of a connected question of something that I've been
when I lived in India, thought about a lot. So I can't remember the book, and I apologize for this, but I was reading a novel, and in that novel, there was this idea of there was somebody in a lower caste who wanted to move to a different caste, and the idea was if this person moves to a higher caste, the whole world gets rearranged. And that idea was, I mean, it was interesting to me for lots and lots of reasons, but I wonder if you could just sort of speak to that, the idea of the caste system, Hinduism. I know that's
Sure.
actually changing now in India. There's actually a huge growing middle class.
Sure. Yeah.
But just that idea that if the caste system changed, the whole world, like the idea of the universal shift.
There must be some creative imagination, but I'll explain. The first thing you need to know about the caste system is that the word caste is not an Indian word. It comes from chastity. It's a Portuguese word, caste. Portuguese word for chastity, which is purity. And it came in because the Europeans were organized around purity. The king and their people and the serfs and their people did not have any intermarriage. So when the Europeans came to India, they were also looking for ways to understand and possibly divide the populace, and they gave us the gift of the caste system. The Indian society is an ossified society because that's an old society. You look at a map of the city I live in, Dublin, and there's a map on the internet where there's a dot for ethnicity. And you will see something strange in the city of Dublin. It will have, white people, brown people, Indian people, Asian people, whatever. And then there's a place where there's a lot of colored dots, highly concentrated. Not so many dots representing white people, but a lot of dots representing black and Hispanic people. You tell me what's that? It's the Santa Rita jail. So this society incarcerates by a wider margin black people and Hispanics, no question about it, right? Now you do this experiment for another 1,000 years, the society is going to ossify. So there's no scriptural basis for caste system. There is a scriptural basis for guilds. Mr. Smith's son is also a Smith. You understand that? Because you do what your father does. Mr. George Bush has Mr. George H.W. Bush has George W. Bush, who does the same business as his dad. Mr. Trump's son is also a real estate magnate, right? Donald Trump Jr. also wants to run for president. You do what your dad does. We've heard. I'm not saying. So there is. You do what your family does. You marry within your community because our rules of our engagement are the same, and you choose a profession that might be a working profession or a thinking profession or a meditating profession or whatever. All these are elements of what you now think of as a caste system. The caste system is not an ossified system. Over time, people move up and down all the time. There are people families were kings, but now they are somewhere in the lower strata of society because over time they've gone down economically into lower middle class and lower.
So that idea that I understood in the book is not
No,
Hinduism.
that's a very very modern interpretation. Thanks again to the British. And I'll give you an example of how the British were doing this. They come and they say, well, we have 4 classes. You have 4 classes? And people are like, well, we have 4 classes. We do have 4 classes. What is the source of that? What's your book? And of the millions of books, there is a book that describes the Varnas. There are professional. There are 4 types of professions you could take, and so they say, "Oh, this must be your authoritative book. You guys don't know it. Let me tell you, your authoritative book is this book, Manusmriti. Manusmriti is one of the thousands of smritis that are available in India. And somehow it's been elevated into, hey, this is the one. It says the rules are, thou shalt not mix with the other caste. That's not how anything actually worked in the tradition in general. You marry within your community, but that's for reasons within your community, but not to your cousin. How do we know that? We ask what lineage you're in, and if you're from my lineage, then I can't marry you. So there was a whole bunch of checks and balances that went in. Why would you marry within your community? I'm vegetarian, and the other one's a meat-eating person. I don't want to marry them because I will have to mix our social systems. Or my mom has showers when she cooks because she's cooking for God. right, first, and then we'll eat the food, but she's cooking for God. So she showers. These people don't shower, so we're not sure if we want to marry them, right? So these things matter because that's how I'm sure it's the same here, right? So that's just the way it works. In an older society, you're going to have a lot of this stuff, and I'm all for reform Hinduism and reform XYZ because every tradition ossifies over time. You got to have a shake up every once in a while. Well, I'm all in favor of that. But there's no scriptural basis for the ossified class system that you might call the caste. There's no scriptural basis for it at all. Families do what the families do, marry within the family, pick a profession. All of these all have scriptural basis, but not the caste system. Did I get everything on the bingo board?
Yeah.
I'm shocked. Mental health. I can talk to it. Depression is a big thing, but this is my personal opinion. I'm not a trained psychologist. I think a lot of mental health issues are either psychological issues that are because of a improper understanding of the self. I'm over-individualized and I feel disconnected with the world because I'm a little nothing. The universe has been around for 13.2 billion years. I will live for 100 years if I'm lucky. I'm a nothing. It's the universe in all space and time. I'm nothing. So I try to protect myself and over-individualize. Of course I'm going to be unhappy. There's no question about it. Right? Part of it is that. The other is, I think, this is me as a yogi for you, sir, that a lot of this is that we have lost the ability to tap into the true source of energy. And every old tradition figures out how to go around this. Because if you see the loneliness epidemic, the deaths of despair happening all around, the depression, the opioid epidemic, the inability to engage with each other, why is this culture so materially rich and so spiritually poor? Why is the average age of life, the average life expectancy dropping in this country for 3 years, 4 years running? Because of suicides. Why? Why do we have great healthcare and people are dying? Because they haven't found a reason to live. Because their source of energy, their every day is a struggle for existence. Their source of energy is missing. What energy? Can I not have more sugar? No. The real energy that animates us is the spiritual energy. But our hearts are hard, our minds are closed. So we have no access to the spiritual energy. Right? There's de-churching going all around. People have stopped going to the churches for whatever reason. So they don't have a community to engage with. They don't have a reason for connecting spiritually with something. How are you going to find that spiritual energy to sustain you? And that in the yoga tradition, that's deeply researched. The sources of spiritual energy are deeply experienced. And all the practices are all about this energy and letting it flow through us. Yes?
One last question. Could you put your YouTube channel on that?
I need someone's phone number so I can give you a link.
I have your number. I'll text it.
You got my number? You send me a text and I'll send you a link. Yeah.
What's your name?
My name is Gaurav Rastogi. My spiritual name, which is what you'll find on YouTube, is Ekras Gorakh. You'll see both. But on YouTube, if you go to the 3 words, Living Deeply Foundation, that's my foundation, and all my videos are under that name. There's a couple of playlists. One is Interfaith, the other is Spirituality for Modern Times. Both of those are, just my recorded talks. And this hopefully should go up there.
It's the 4850 number?
45, yes.
Can you spell your name? Because it went really fast.
All right. No.
It's on
It's on the schedule. You see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you won't see that name on the YouTube channel because I have a busy professional life and I want Google to be confused about myself. So I have a spiritual name under which all my spiritual talks are. And that's to help Mr. Google clearly identify which of my talks is where.
What's your startup?
Long story.
Can I talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about it. Yes, your question. Yes, ma'am.
In our certification, we have to have a second religion to study.
Sure.
So if we were to choose this, can we come down here? Is there a structure that's been worked out for us?
So if you want to learn about Hinduism, I got a better deal than this temple. I run the Hindu Community Institute. I'm the dean of the programs. Right, so we have classes on Sundays, because of course Sundays, 1 to 5, it's in Milpitas, also online. I welcome you to come sit with us. We have, if you send me an email, I'll tell you what classes are up, and sometimes we have Hinduism classes. You're welcome to attend. They're also online, but come see us in
Yeah, I'm
Milpitas.
in person, so I need your email.
Yeah,
I have, okay,
yeah, sure.
all right.
Yeah. It's this. You can go to the website hinduci.org, Hindu Community Institute. So I run a counselor program. So the questions you have about tradition and so on, those are the questions we teach people for the exact same reason.
That's great.
Yes, sir.
This is just a quick question about protocol in the temple.
Yeah.
Is that a space children are welcome?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Like in strollers?
Yeah. If they're in the stroller, I think there's some rule. There's a board that says strollers in or out. I'm not sure. Usually, I don't think strollers are going to be allowed inside.
But children are.
Oh, yeah, all the time. Are you kidding me? No. People bring in children to get them blessed, so of course children are allowed. Some of my fondest memories of childhood are going to the temple and running around, screaming. So yes, children are allowed. Of all ages. I grew up in Delhi, and also North India and little small town India as well. Yeah. We're in Uttar Pradesh and Punjab, so all over North India, basically. Small town. But then I did a lot of my early youth in Delhi. I did my education in Western India, so it's all over. So, have I addressed your questions? Have I?
Yes.
Very much. Thank you.
All right, good. I'm going to do a closing prayers. It's called Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. And if you're interested, I think I have someone send me an email and remind me to send you the prayers I did at the opening and the one I'm doing at the closing. I have recorded them and they're on SoundCloud. Not just the prayer, but a extremely long 15 to 18 minute talk on what the prayer is about, why this prayer is what it is. So, that's also on my SoundCloud. Again, SoundCloud, if you go to Living Deeply Foundation, you'll see it, but I'll send you the links. There's a lot of other videos.
Living deeply?
Yeah, Living Deeply, but Foundation. Just write Living Deeply Foundation. All right. So if you please accompany me on the closing prayers. This is a prayer for sort of world health, well-being kind of thing. So it's called Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Let all be at peace. Sarve Santu Niramaya. Let all be free of illnesses. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. May all see auspicious signs. Okay, and then the fourth thing I can't remember because I remember it here. Now I'm forgetting it here. It'll come when I chant, and then I'll tell you what it is. All right, so please sit with your back straight, close your eyes. Just center yourself, bring yourself into the physical body for once. Close your eyes gently, sitting with the back straight and the back, neck and head in a straight line. Relax your shoulders, relax your belly. As you inhale, let the belly expand. As you exhale, let everything go. Gently slow down your breath. Bring your palms together at the heart center, pressing the palms together gently, touching the fingers together gently, and gently touching the back of the thumbs into the chest. I'm going to chant Om once and then the closing prayer, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Exhale completely, take a deep breath. Inhale. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah. Sarve Santu Niramayaha. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Release your palms, rub your palms together to generate some heat, and then gently cup your eyeballs to transfer that heat. Blinking, open your eyes and pull your palms back like an open book. Namaskar. Thank you. If you like, we can go to the front of the temple and take selfies.